Trey, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well, sir. How are you this morning?
I'm doing terrific.
Good. Let's start with Las Vegas and let your constituents and all of us, the whole country, know how you feel and what you're thinking about all that.
Well, all of us were horrified by the act of terror we saw play out in Las Vegas. This crazed madman murdered people deliberately, and what we saw was just horrifying. And it reminds us we live in a very dangerous world. We live in a world where evil exists, where hatred exists. The investigation is still ongoing. Mm-hmm. At this point, it is not clear what this individual's motives were. There are all sorts of allegations swirling around. ISIS has claimed credit for the attack.
Right.
And the first step is going to be for the investigation to conclude and to understand who this individual was and why they carried out such a horrific act of terror, murdering fellow Americans.
Senator, you and I have talked and many times before. In fact, you were here in the Alamo Lounge a couple of months ago. We have talked about how during a time of heightened emotion and when we are raw, our nerves are exposed right now, that is the absolute worst time to make a decision because you always make a poor decision at that time. We need to be thinking with our heads right now. Yet, as always, the left immediately went to, we've got to take more guns away from people. Hillary Clinton, the bodies were still laying out there, and she went into, we've got to get more gun control. We've got to take guns away. They want to get rid of the Second Amendment, and it is very troubling what I'm hearing right now from people who are in Washington who suddenly want to take away a right that we have as American citizens to protect ourselves, not only from others who would cause evil to us, but even our own government.
Well, it is unfortunate to see how quickly and how immediately so many Washington politicians move to try to politicize a tragedy.
Right.
I'm reminded of Rahm Emanuel, who said, "You never let a crisis go to waste."
That's right.
And we've seen this now over and over again. Whenever there is a tragedy, whenever there is a terrorist or madman who commits a horrific crime, it seems within seconds of the crime that the Democrats immediately go to new gun control laws, trying to strip away weapons from law-abiding citizens, and those two are fundamentally disconnected. We know the Orlando terrorist attack that occurred, where that individual murdered 49 people at the Pulse nightclub. There we know why he did that. He called 911 and he pledged his allegiance to ISIS and al-Baghdadi. And it was an instance of radical Islamic terrorism. And indeed, the discussion that should have followed is the fact that the Obama administration had multiple red flags on this individual, a significant amount of information that he had been radicalized, and they'd failed to act to prevent the attack. Now, we don't know if this is true about the Vegas shooter or not. At this point, the facts are still being developed, and it is worth knowing exactly what happened and asking, were mistakes made? Could this have been prevented? What was the information there to stop this murderer from carrying out his horrific crime? But that too often is not the objective of Washington Democrats. Their objective is to undermine the Second Amendment, not for the criminals, by the way, but for law-abiding.
That's right.
And they're targeting the wrong group and the wrong individuals.
That's 100% correct. I want to change topics totally and completely here and go to tax reform, because I know that's going to be a very hotly contested, or at least talked about item in Washington. And some of your great colleagues, Senator Rand Paul, Senator Mike Lee, they have written pieces that have said, look, we don't want to bring in more people and cause the middle class to start paying more taxes, which the tax plan as it sits right now has the potential to do. What are your thoughts on the tax plan overall?
Well, I believe we're going to get tax reform done.
Amen.
And I think it's critically important that we get it done. I think the details are still very much in flux. We've seen an initial proposal from Republican leadership and from the administration, but the proposal right now does not have many details, and so we don't know the specifics of it. Some of the broad brush outlines are encouraging, like, for example, ending the death tax.
Mm-hmm.
That's unequivocally good. We should be doing that. That's part of the proposal. I support that. Another part of the proposal is allowing the immediate expensing of capital expenditure in businesses, so that if a farmer buys a new tractor, if a small business buys new equipment, you can immediately deduct those costs. That is unambiguously good for jobs and economic growth, has a powerful effect growing the economy and creating more jobs and opportunity. Elements like that are very positive. What I am urging my colleagues, what I'm urging the president on tax reform, is really two words: bold and simple. Be bold and be simple. Don't just piddle around the edges. We need a big, meaningful tax cut.
You know what we need? We need Ted Cruz's postcard. We that should be the thing that we focus on. When you announce that you're running for president, you pull that postcard out. That's what we have to have in this country, period.
Well, Trey, I unsurprisingly I agree with you, and that's one of the things I am urging is simplify, simplify, simplify. Let every American fill out our taxes on a postcard. That's going to be part of the discussion, and those debates are going to play out in the coming weeks.
Okay, lastly, Obamacare repeal and replace. I just got information this morning that said insurance premiums in Georgia going to go up 57% next year. We got the same thing happening in other states where it's just going through the roof. You also had a plan to redo that. Is this something that is going to be revisited, or is this completely off the table for now?
It had better be revisited. It has obviously been maddening and frustrating to see Republicans in Congress unable to get our act together, unable to deliver on the promise to repeal Obamacare. My view is we can't give up. I think failure is not an option. We spent 7 years promising the voters, if you elect us, we'll repeal Obamacare. I think if we fail to do it, we look like blithering idiots. And I think we're close. I mean, there's nothing I have spent more time on this year than trying to bring Republicans together, trying to get 50 out of 52 Republicans on the same page. I think we're close. I think there's a lot of common ground. And I think the key to getting this done is to focus on reducing premiums. The biggest reason people are so unhappy, are hurting so badly under Obamacare, is what you just mentioned.
Right.
Their premiums have skyrocketed. The way you reduce premiums is more choices, more competition, more consumer freedom. And so I give you my word, I am keeping at it, pressing and pressing and pressing. And I think we need to keep working hard and rolling up our sleeves until we get consensus and get this done.
And finally, I love the Disaster Tax Relief and Airport and Airway Extension Act of 2017, where you're helping people that have been hit by Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. Love that.
Well, thank you. That was a bit of good news that folks who are listening, particularly those who were impacted by Harvey, that affects you directly. Mm-hmm. Last week, we passed into law tax relief for those who were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. It was legislation that I authored with John Cornyn and Marco Rubio. It was the Cruz Cornyn Rubio bill. And it provides that for those in the path of either Harvey or Irma or Maria, that you can deduct personal casualty losses on your taxes without being subject to the standard limits, that you can access your IRA or your 401k, your retirement funds, to pull money out to rebuild without paying the 10% penalty you'd ordinarily pay. It encourages charitable giving all across the country to hurricane relief funds without being subject to the ordinary limits. And for small businesses that continued paying their employees during the hurricane, even when the employees couldn't come to work, even when the business was shut down, it creates a tax credit for those businesses that kept the paychecks coming. So that all of these are tax measures designed to help Texas in the process of rebuilding. We're rebuilding now. We're making real progress, but we've got a long way to go. and the Cruz, Corn, and Rubio bill was passed last week. The president signed it Friday night, and so that tax relief is immediately available for Texans who were hit by Harvey.
Sir, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you making yourself available to our listeners when you do. Thank you for being back on this morning.
Thank you, my friend. God bless.